Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It's Tuesday, June the 24th, 2025, and today's topic will be a continuation. I'm doing a deep dive into basic drawing this week, or returning to the basics, because I've talked about it before and I'll continue to. And it will be about understanding basic forms. But before we begin, welcome back if you are returning, and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day, and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer. So today I'll talk about creating forms. There's different ways. Tomorrow's video will be about values or shading, that kind of thing, sort of like what I did here. But today we'll just do like the forms without thinking about shading. So as I'm looking at this sketch page, the first thought that comes to mind is the idea of, so yeah, check out yesterday's video to see how I came up with, these are pretty basic shapes, but there might be some interesting ideas, and mainly these videos is to help you to draw. So you can kind of see how I came up with this sort of like complex shape, if you will. I just combined like different shapes. This exercise will kind of help with the idea of like understanding like angles. So for example, let's say I draw like this. See if you can draw this again. So like this. Like just do your best to get like that angle correctly. Same with this one. And do it kind of definitely. Or definite. Just like put down the mark. That's why I use a pen. You could use a pencil. And it doesn't have to be that perfect, which is why it's a sketch. And yeah, you can fix it if you want. The idea behind this is that once you do this, then connect. So you have like this point. That's why like points are important. That's why I went over them first, and then just connect it. So when you draw it like this, like just do it definite, and then it helps you to practice like the line work, because this basic drawing like deep dive isn't really about line work, but I mention it, and a pen does help because you can see it like pretty obviously. But that's something to keep in mind and to practice. So if you do this, so here's a point, and then that one. So I'm just gonna look at where I'm going, and I'm just going to the like hand-eye coordination kind of thing. So just do it like that, and it just has a lot of character because it's like your handwriting. So now you have a form because you connected different shapes together. So another example could be, let's say you have this point right here and then like right there. So let's connect that. And then this one and this one. And then you could just... So this is kind of like a doodling kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff that you can kind of just play around with. And it would work. And you created a form, like visually. Same with this one. Like you could just go like this. Like the angle's the same. Right here, and then connect it. And then if you feel like you might be able to see like this side, like you might not, you could just go like this, and that's sort of like the shading thing that I'll go over tomorrow. So this is to help start to understand how to draw, sort of the language of it, and also the hand-eye coordination part of it, which will automatically like improve your drawing no matter what you're drawing. So let's make some forms from this. So one thing could be, let's say you draw these like lines that kind of go off of the, like just the basic shape, but you just go like this. So you can see that it starts to look like some kind of form. Same with this. And then if you want to control like the height of it, you can control like the height of the form. So this is not like a bad thing to just play around with. Here's another thing to play around with. You can copy this shape like this. So copy like the angles. So this is kind of a good way to practice copying angles, because when you're drawing stuff from like life, for example, let's say you're looking at a building, just in general, but like that, it helps when you're observing something, you're seeing like the angles. If you want to keep the perspective, if you want to be a little bit more precise about the perspective, so you have this angle right here, you can make the angle be the same that way, and then that'll make it look a little bit more precise if that's important. Sometimes you're just kind of eyeballing it. Also, like, you can have a different shape inside here. You could have a kind of a circular shape, and then depending on like the height of it, you might not see like that might be all you need. I mean, you could kind of imply like that. So these are basic things that you can doodle. For this one, for example, let's say you have, I'm going to copy like that curved line and then just connect it. And you can go over it again. You could be sketchy about it, but still definite, because it looks nicer and it'll help you practice your line quality. And then maybe like this front part you don't really see, or maybe like this could go like that. And I'm just going to copy the angles. See, I'm copying this angle right here. That's just, for the most part, that would work. And then there's stuff like perspective, which I'll talk about. It's kind of an intermediate thing, honestly. And I do have I think I have it in the basics playlist, like stuff like perspective. But when you're looking at something and drawing it, that's basically what it is as far as like the basic forms and like the shapes and stuff. I'll draw some like heads and connect it to the idea of the basic, these like basic drawing concepts. So for example, and this is why it's a language, because it's up to you. Circles are like pretty easy to draw. So I'm just going to draw a circle. I don't know if they're easy to draw, but like they're quick, so they don't have to be perfect. So let's say I just draw like a circle here, and then we'll have like, and what I mean is, let's say I'm coming up with like a pose. So I'll just draw like a circle, and let's say I just need like a person, and they are like kind of looking over here somewhere. And that's just because of the drawing, like the sketchbook page. And a line is pretty easy to draw. And we'll talk about proportions in figure drawing. In the figure drawing playlist, there's all these different proportions. But I want to point out that it's not like that important. Depending on how realistic you want something to look and how consistent you want it to look, it's really not like that important. So let's just say that this is sort of like the neck, and then I'll draw another line, and that'll be the shoulder. So circles, lines. For the shoulder, like the joint, I'll just draw like a circle. And this is not a bad way to draw. And this is called like the mannequin, basically. And here's like a curved line for like the back, the spine. And obviously just look at some figure reference. However, a lot of this is for if you're just wanting to draw stuff from imagination. For like the face, I'm just going to draw like an oval. So that's like an oval shape. And the circle is for like the cranium. So those are like just shapes. They're not even really forms, but like, remember how if you can connect different shapes, you can get forms. An example of that, I'll draw like kind of like the neck area. So let's say that I have a line. Let's just draw like another person. So we'll draw like this. And then if I kind of do this, what's happening is that there's these ovals. And then when you connect them, kind of like what we were doing up here, you'll get a cylinder. So these are basic forms. So a circle is basically a sphere. It's always going to look like a circle. So like that's the form. And since it is a sphere, it always looks like a circle. But notice that right here, that's a cylinder, and there's these two ovals, and you connect them and you get a cylinder. So cylinders are very helpful in general, and especially for figure drawing. So just an example of this could be like the arm. So when you're figuring out like proportions, points and lines are really like the main thing. So let's say that this is the shoulder, and then here's another one, and then here's another one. So that's like, it's like a constellation. If you draw a line, like that's how you can see the proportion. So let's say that we want to make this look equal, and then you can do for like the joint itself, depending on the angle, like the perspective. If it's flat, kind of like this, then circles are pretty good. And if you connect them, you'll get a cylinder. And for like the elbow, a lot of times I'll just leave it open. So by that I just mean this. So you have a cylinder for the forearm, and then a cylinder for the upper arm. And then for the joints, they're more complex shapes. But in general, and that's just something to study, it's kind of like that. Same with like the shoulder. A lot of times I'll just kind of have this. However, I'll go back in and like add like the contour of it, because the arm is like sitting inside there. Same with like, let's say the hand. A lot of times a circle is it's a good way to gauge the proportion. Kind of like this. Or like a square, or whatever shape works for you. But that's how you can construct something. Construct like the figure and stuff. Let's say you wanted to add, like you're sketching, but like you want to add stuff, the rest of the figure. That's why like the basic shapes are good, because for example, like with this figure, like I find it easier to just draw a circle, kind of like this, to kind of indicate, and then make adjustments, but it sort of indicates like where the head would be. Or you could start with like the size of the head itself. When the face is mostly being shown, I find that ovals are usually, ellipses are usually the best one, because that's like the face. And then for like a more profile, or like this back view right here, like circles, so that looks a little bit more like a profile right here. And the neck is just a line. So let's say this figure is right here, and the neck is kind of like right here, and then like the shoulder. And then I mean, in the figure drawing playlist, I have a little bit more detail about this kind of thing. It's just some ideas. It's kind of up to you to, so like in this back view, for example, like the ribs could be oval. And then we already said the neck is kind of like a cylinder. And then the trapezius, the name itself, I think implies, it's like a trapezoid. It implies like this angular shape. But of course that looks different for everybody. But I mean, it's, in general, it's like that. But yeah, tomorrow I'll talk about the shading aspect of it. You really don't have to worry about it for a while if you're just kind of learning to draw sort of these basic forms. You can just leave it open. But that'll be it for today. I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine. And if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. And until next time, keep on sketching.